is Maximus Decimus Meridius.
I am your father.
You like Huey Lewis on the news?
Yes. And you're not sure about this, are you?
You're gonna die, clown!
What's the most you ever lost on a coin toss? Sam, the most you ever lost on a coin toss. Call it.
Whose motorcycle is this?
It's a chopper, baby.
Whose chopper is this?
Zed's.
Who's Zed?
Zed's dead, baby.
Bring out today!
This is a tasty burger.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Wait a minute. You ain't heard nothing yet.
Welcome to the fucking show.
Hello, welcome back to See What Sticks, a podcast about everything and nothing. I'm Russell.
And I'm Ben.
And we're back for a third week in a row of movie-based discussions, so solely movie discussions, which I think is cool. I like it. And I don't know what Ben feels about this topic, but I definitely had to slug my way through at least half of this experience.
Agreed. We'll talk about the kind of our reactions that we have to these, our main subject tonight, like, you know, past the 20 years ago that we first saw these.
Yeah, so, it'll be interesting. Also, I'm going to open this up with a story my dad literally just told me when I was, like, sitting downstairs eating. So, my dad just told me a story about how when he was a kid, my dad has 4 sisters, by the way, so this adds into it. And for those of you who are in my family listening to this, hello. So my dad just told me a story that apparently he's never told anybody except me and my mom right now. And when he was a kid, they were getting ready for school, him and all of his sisters and stuff. And one morning, he was waiting outside the bathroom for one of his sisters to finish up, and he really had to go. So he apparently went downstairs and peed on the carpet and blamed it on the family dog. So, for those people listening, that's a story that actually happened, quote, Mike. But yeah, so I wanted to open the podcast up with that non sequitur, just so we all, we're all in the mood for the debauchery of a review of 3 films that we're about to do.
A palate cleanser, if you will.
Oh, it is very much a palate cleanser for what's about to happen. And note, I have no notes right now. I watched these today, and I was like, I'm going to be able to talk about all 3 of these complex films on a podcast tonight. Believe me.
Yep, I got no notes as well. I finished the third one late last night.
Nice. I started the first one. For those of you listening, you're like, first what? We'll tell you in about 5 seconds. So I started the first one a few days ago, and I was like, I can't do this. So I forced myself to do it yesterday, and then I was like, oh, thank God Ben can't do the episode. We're recording a day later than we usually do. So I stayed up last night really late watching them. And then I had a meeting at work earlier. And then I came home and watched one. And now we're here. So, yeah. Ben, can I ask a question?
What's up?
What's that behind you? I know people can't see this, but Ben has a sex swing behind him or something.
No, that's a exercise bike with some resistance straps.
Oh, that's your exercise bike that you were talking about?
Yeah.
Oh.
Which in no way resembles a sex swing.
Well, Ben doesn't have a sex swing behind him. Oh, they're lat pull down things. Interesting. Yeah. Ben, have you been using that a bunch? You're looking thinner.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I've been using it at least 3 times a week.
Yeah, well, it's paying off. Good for you, buddy.
Thank you.
So we're talking about The Matrix today.
Yes.
Boom, I ripped the Band-Aid off. Ben, what is your opinion of these films before watching them? Because my opinion has changed.
Yeah, I'll give you my opinion of the films that I saw, that I had when I saw them almost 20 years ago, I think is when they came out.
Mm-hmm.
And at first when I, a teenager watching these movies, I thought they were amazing. This sort of new standard for action movies that is being set right before our eyes. So yeah, I really enjoyed the first one. The two sequels when I was younger, I was kind of like, these are a little bit heavier, got a lot more going on, but I still liked them because the action. So in my opinion, today, after watching them or rewatching them, the first one I think holds up pretty well, and Reloaded and Revolutions are kind of trash.
Yeah, okay, thank you for being on the same page. Because maybe that's an unpopular opinion. I don't know, because I haven't really asked many people about what they think of the Matrix trilogy. But I completely agree. I think the first one still holds up incredibly well. I mean, there are some dated CGI effects and some dated...
Of course.
Just other dated internet-type pop culture things that this film falls into. But I guess you could explain that away with saying it's in the Matrix, so their technology ended in 1999. Like, you could just explain away the fact that it's perpetually 1999 in these films. So I've heard that as kind of a fan theory, just saying like, well, technically they're in the future and the like program stopped at this date or whatever. So, okay, cool. That film holds up. And then the next two are really weird, but there's a really cool highway fight scene in the second one, which is worth the price of admission. And I feel like that fight scene is one of those ones that's not super complex, but I feel like it's one of those things that definitely cost the Wachowski brothers like $900 million to film. You know what I mean? It seems like one of those kind of scenes.
Yeah, a big action set piece that you sell the trailer. Or you sell the movie like with that, like with clips of that in the trailer.
Oh, yeah. And I feel like, just like the way they shot it, I feel like they just filmed it on a highway outside of Los Angeles, just like in a loop. It's kind of what it looks like.
That would be my best guess is what they did, yeah.
Yeah, like they had it, and then they were going for like a quarter mile, got off an exit ramp, went on, got on the other way, and had the expressway closed for like the day. And they just kept going back and forth and filming. Just because it's very nondescript. But we'll get into that film. So Ben, what's The Matrix about?
Basically, if we're starting from the very beginning, a hacker, everyday man named what's his first name? Something Anderson.
Neo.
Because like after the first name, like after the first movie, he just goes by Neo. But like Agent Smith called him Mr. Anderson all the time. Like,
yeah. I'm IMDbing it right now. We're starting off to a really, really, really hot start here. On IMDb, it just says Neo, so that's literally no help.
But yeah, anywho, he comes to find out that the world as we know it is just a simulation for humans while they're being harvested by machines. And there's a resistance group led by Lawrence Fishburne who kind of starts to recruit Neo to try and get him to take the blue pill with a big iconic scene, red or blue pill. And basically, yeah, that's the overall sort of world building of it. That is Morpheus's resistance group is trying to open everyone's eyes and fight the machines that are just using them as energy sources. Mm-hmm. Lots of cool hand-to-hand combat and gunfights ensue. Yeah, kind of one of the bigger pop culture moments in the 90s, I'd say. Or late 90s, early 2000s. That time span was definitely the release of The Matrix, because I think it did set a new bar for like quality of action movie that needed to be hit by movies that came out in the next decade.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and we'll get into the plot in a sec, but I think these films really did kind of create a new genre of action film where they relied heavily on CGI. I think this film, in some ways, you could correlate to paving the way for Marvel movies, just because there's so many CGI set pieces that are purely computer generated, that I think once people realized, oh wow, you can do all of this in a computer, figuratively and like pun intended because it's the Matrix, but I think it really did pave the way for a lot of superhero movies, because we as an audience, or we as like the public, we're like, no, yeah, we're cool with this, like watching all the CGI stuff happen in a live action film. And that, I think, really does translate to today, where a lot of action movies, apart from like Mission Impossible and a few others, it's just a CGI set piece for 2 hours and 10 minutes or whatever.
Right. And I think one of the things that the first movie did well was it relied still a lot on a lot of CGI like scenes, but I think it relied less so than the sequels. And I think part of that quality shows after watching the movie after 20 years, like compared to the sequels. I think the set pieces and like special effects hold up better than the first one, because like the first time you ever see the bullet time scene where the camera it's basically just a setup of cameras, like multiple cameras in a big circle. In a big circle. I don't think they did that exact sort of setup with cinematography in the sequels. I think they just completely relied on CG.
Yeah,
for that type of action, and it kind of shows.
It does. And the first one has a lot of wire work. There's a scene in the lobby of a office building, and 90% of that is wire work and practical explosions, like small like dynamite charges on set or whatever. Yeah, it is like dynamite or C4 charges on set to give you the explosions. And a lot of it, even like the train fight near the end, and there's like some street shots going on. And all of that is in-camera stuff with a really weird green filter over it, which I get, but it's like really off-putting when you watch it, just because everything feels grimy and gross. But yeah, so that's the first movie, and I do really like it. And I'm going to compare these a bit to the Star Wars prequels. Do you think... So apparently with the first Star Wars prequel... George Lucas put like a bunch of effort into like set design, all this stuff, and then the next ones they got cocky and they're like, nah, fuck it, let's do all this in CGI. Do you think The Matrix is a little bit of that as well, noting they also came out around the same time?
I think it is. I think there's an element to that, and I'm sure that it's probably a lot less time. Yeah, it takes a lot less time to render something like an entire scene, like action scene in CG, than to set up that thing in practical effects, like on set, and they have to do that several times and possibly take a few days to actually film the thing. Mm-hmm. So I think they took advantage of the time economics that CG provides studios with or filmmakers with, and also maybe try and squeeze a little bit more money out of these films, even though they knew they were going to be huge blockbuster hits. But just paying CG artists and special effects people instead of paying for entire sets to be destroyed in an action scene, I think that's probably going to earn them a little bit more money on the back end as well.
Yeah. I don't know about this side of the film industry because I've never had to do this and we never did it in film school, but do you think doing a lot of these big set pieces at the time would have been more expensive than doing CGI? Because I know, like, for the Marvel movies, like, half the reason they're $500 billion to make is because all the CGI artists you have to pay. And when and where do you think that changed from it being more expensive to cheaper to more expensive? Like, I know, or more time consuming as well, because I feel like you almost can balance it out.
I think it also depends on, like, you're probably going to get what you pay for if you're a producer. Like, if you probably have to pay good big money dollars to the guys that do the CGI work on, like, the Avengers movies, because they tend to get very good CG out of those and not kind of the cheap looking stuff that almost some of the poorer CG graphics in like the Matrix movies kind of look nowadays.
Yeah, everything looks like rubbery. Like it's something with the skin, like like the Marvel movies. I think also because better technology, but like there's something with the skin that doesn't look human. Whereas like if you look at someone like for Star Wars Rogue One, they had Grand Moff Tarkin CGI'd, but his skin looked real. So
yeah, I think you would really, really have to be looking and kind of know that is a computer rendered person to have really noticed it. Like anybody that didn't know that that actor died a long time ago and is just being, portrayed by a computer graphic might not have noticed.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that was something that is a big takeaway in The Matrix, and something that I do find that the second two films lack. And we'll get into the first film more, but I think that's something the second two lack, is that kind of tangibility that the first one has. Like there's like, yeah, okay, I get it. It's in The Matrix and it's like in a computer, blah, 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 blah. But the feel of that world in the first one is so real, even though there's hella CGI going on. It feels dirty in a real way instead of computer generated dirty, which makes you just like detached. And that's why the whole Sentinels thing, which are these like spider like robot entities that are living in the real world, not the Matrix world. They're like a enemy kind of force that is designed to suck the life force out of humans. And I don't know, I guess in the first one there's a few scenes where it's really effective because they clearly built those Sentinel robots and they had them on a set. But we'll talk about it as the second two. There's a lot of them in a certain few scenes with a battle. And I'm just like, okay, like, cool. Like, you don't feel anything.
Right. I think one of the biggest problems with the sequels is that they try to build the world and the lore almost too much. They almost went too far down the rabbit hole with the story, or what they wanted to make like their attempt at like a complicated, deep story. I think it just bogged people down with, most people came, sure, for a good story, but people were coming to see, grand action like shootouts and set pieces and like hand-to-hand fighting and stuff like that. And when you get into the like real nitty-gritty of like, the Sentinels like converging on Zion and all that, it just seems like who cares? So
yeah, and it's like mech suits versus that, and it's like The Matrix was kind of, the first one was sort of a success because it was so different, and then when you fall into the fighting a bunch of nameless enemies, you get into the same problem that Star Wars, like the Clone Wars, had, and you get into problems with Marvel movies having now, where I think some of the most memorable fights, in my opinion, from Marvel movies would be like from Captain America: The Winter Soldier, that are all hand-to-hand combat fights, not some giant intergalactic space battle. Like, I could not tell you like what film that was from if you showed me a 3-second clip of just like a space battle, if it was from Thor, Guardians of the Galaxy, or whatever, or even like Infinity War. But a hand-to-hand combat fight, I could be like, oh yeah, it's from this. And I think The Matrix has that as well, where the first one, you could show people each of the movies if they'd never seen them, but describe them, and people will tell you which one is the first one.
Yeah, and the first one spends a lot more meaningful time in the Matrix, like in the simulated world, and I think that's what people prefer more than the sort of Zion battles where people are dressed in their in raggedy clothes. Like, no, they, the poster shows Carrie-Anne Moss, Keanu Reeves, and Lawrence Fishburne in these like slick ass leather suits fighting people in the Matrix, guns, hand-to-hand combat. That's the kind of action that people wanted to see, and that's the kind that, like, the good stuff that the first Matrix did provide. And like we said earlier, the Reloaded and Revolutions, they both have like some decent action set pieces in them, but I don't think not nearly as much as they needed, and not as like cool and successful as the first one.
Yes, definitely. So I guess on that, let's kind of get into the plot of each film like really loosely. So we already touched on the first one, that it's about this guy named Mr. Anderson, Neo, who gets approached with a red pill, blue pill situation where it's like, do you want to know the real truth of the universe, or do you want to stay in this like blissful ignorance that you live in now? And because it's a movie, he does pick to learn the reality of the universe. He gets like unbirthed from the Matrix. He gets like freed, and there's a very weird scene where he like is in this gel pod, and he like takes off the like, there's like a plug, like a big kind of, it almost looks like a fire hydrant faucet.
Yeah, like a power cord.
Yeah, that locks in the back of his head and his arms, which are the ways that humans in this universe tap into the Matrix. So he does that. He escapes. He's kind of given clothes, and he's on this ship that's going through the like crust of the Earth where there's still heat, because we'll get into that later. But so they're going through there, and they're going to Zion, and that's kind of the plot of the film. But then in the Matrix, Neo is really strong with manipulating the code, which everyone knows as like the falling numbers, like the green falling numbers and letters, which is how you read the Matrix in this universe. And a bunch of the film is like, you have to learn how to like jump off the building to know that it's not real. You have to learn like the kung fu stuff, and they're like downloading all this into Neo's head, which I think is one of the first things where you get like a dated reference where they use the word downloading, and they use like these words that we use now very differently, because I don't think the technology was developed in the same way, where they're like, we're downloading this information to his mind, where it's almost like if you watch a movie with a robot from 1960, it's like they don't understand technology yet in the right way to use these terms properly. So that does make it feel kind of quaint.
Yeah, and I think you're going to have that problem anytime that a movie bases a lot of its plot around current technology. Like, and that stuff's going to feel dated in like 5 or 10 years.
Yes.
With the rate of growth of technology nowadays. So like, I don't really fault the movie that much for that kind of stuff, just because like something that relies so much on computing, hacking, technology, all that crap. It's inevitable that something's going to be dated with it.
Yeah, most definitely. So, going off of that, then we meet like the main characters, who, let me get all the names right here, and the corresponding actors. So we have, sorry, I'm doing this on the internet, guys, and it's not loading as fast as I would like it to. Also, this is just like a thing because we're talking about the Matrix and the internet. It's really cold where I am in Chicago right now, and I feel like that is affecting our internet speeds here. I don't know, but okay. So I got to the page finally. So we have Neo, who's played by Keanu Reeves. We have Morpheus, who's Lawrence Fishburne. We have Trinity, who's Carrie-Anne Moss. We have Agent Smith, who's Hugo Weaving. And I think, and then Marcus Chong is Tank. And I think those are the most important ones for this film. So once Neo learns his training from Morpheus, he is able to go into the Matrix fully and deal with Agent Smith, who's kind of like a virus, who's really making issues for our protagonists and humans in general who are in the Matrix. And Hugo Weaving kind of turns into the main antagonist of this entire film.
Yes, and
the entire series.
Extending into the rest of the series for sure.
So, then the film kind of, there's an action scene, there's a betrayal, there's like someone turns, and then we get the fight happening in the Matrix between Agent Smith and Neo, so between Hugo Weaving and Keanu Reeves. But then there's also stuff happening in the real world while Neo's plugged into the Matrix that's making the scene more tense. It's kind of like if you've ever seen Inception, it's like there's things happening in each of the layers, which makes the layers themselves more tense because of that. And we also learn that if you die in the Matrix, you die for real because it like fries your brain. But also if you die in real life, you're also dead in the Matrix, maybe. We'll get to that later. But yeah, so this film has like those famous shots of like the backward bullet time. It has like the train scene, and then Neo escapes using a telephone, because that's how you have to like outload from the Matrix, or like undownload yourself from the Matrix, is through a phone. Because landlines and dial-up was still a thing at the time. Yeah. That's why phones are connected to your way in and out of the Matrix. So
simple payphones.
Yep. So in general, what's your overall consensus of this film? Is it a good movie? Should people watch it? Is it a shit movie? Should people not watch it?
I still think it's a really good movie. Like we established, there's good action set pieces. It's still an interesting, it's still a very interesting concept, I think, and that concept holds up. Decent enough acting from Keanu Reeves. He's at his best when he doesn't have to say much, like in the John Wick movies.
Yeah.
So his acting range kind of shows a little bit in this one, or his lack of range, I should rather say. But yeah, Carrie-Anne Moss is pretty good in it. Overall, I still enjoy it a lot.
Me too. I do actually really like this movie quite a bit, and this is a movie that I've actually shown to other people who've never seen it. It's something I'm like, if you haven't seen this, you should probably see this movie. Even though you may not love the plot, it's kind of a staple of pop culture. The other two that we're about to talk about aren't, but I think this movie is one of those films that in film school in 2060 they'll show as a movie from the 90s or the 2000s. The Matrix will be one of those films.
I think so. Yeah, I think there's some good lessons to learn as far as innovation in cinematography because of the bullet time or the style that they shot the bullet time scenes in. That's just different ways to use camera work to make something look badass.
Yeah, I really do. I think this is there's a lot in this film that's a masterclass in creating something original, but the next two are a masterclass in how not to do something and how to kind of stumble in the shoes that you're trying to fill. So that being said, the second movie picks up around 6 months after the first movie, and a lot more of this film takes place in the human world, and we're introduced to the Oracle and the programmer and a lot of the religious-y undertones of this film, and a lot more of the religious-y undertones of the next film as well.
Yeah, it really starts to open up the plot of just kind of the world building a lot more, and I think it suffers a lot from that. I don't know if you agree or not.
Oh, it definitely does. This is one of those films that I think if you left less explained, it'd be a lot more interesting.
Right. But I can also see from the filmmaker's point of view, trying to do more of the same probably wouldn't have been a good idea either.
Yeah.
So they, I can understand that they wanted to explore this world more and to make it more, I guess, intriguing past just, bullets flying and action and all that. But they just didn't hit the mark as far as successfully expanding things beyond just action and making it more of a fleshed out sort of universe that they're in.
Yeah, I think so. I think, if you had remade the first one again, people would have hated it and this would never have gone anywhere. But doing what they did also was a misstep in a different direction. I think what you could have done is, and now I'm not trying to do the Wachowskis' job, but it's one of those things where I think you could have expanded in a certain way, but there was a lot of heavy-handed undertones that I don't think you need in this kind of film. And those can be really, really, really useful in a lot of different pieces. But this one, it kind of just felt
shoehorned in.
Yeah, the whole, the very obvious metaphor that, Neo is Jesus, and there's this whole self-sacrifice thing that will happen for the greater good of humanity. Having this Oracle who's kind of a god-type figure, or sort of a god-type figure, but then also having the creator who's a god-type figure as well. Having the Hugo Weaving character as sort of this devil antagonist. It's very, very biblical in a sense. And even the twins in this who are in the fight on the train or on the highway, there's some like religious-y undertone things associated with them, as well as being like these angels and having this kind of angelic, ghostly sort of look. That I don't want to say just because it's associated with a religious thing it's bad, but it's unnecessary.
Yeah, I think unnecessary is the best way to put it. Yeah, really, it just seems pointless. It wasn't needed. It wasn't really touched upon much at all in the first one, and the first one went by just fine. Yeah, like you said, there's nothing wrong like in and of itself of trying to like put any sort of undertones, be they religious or any other undertones, in a movie, but don't force it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a bunch of like, there's a lot of this movie that I'm like, it was so close to like being, so I think a lot of trilogies, one of the few ones I think really, really, really works, of course, I'm going to say Lord of the Rings, where each of them build upon each other positively and they don't get worse. But I think this film franchise series, whatever you want to call it, I think does hit the same problem that the prequels for Star Wars did. And unlike the original trilogy, because Empire Strikes Back is widely regarded as better than A New Hope, whereas in most other trilogies, the first film is regarded as the best one, and then they kind of decline in quality from there. And The Matrix definitely is that. And this film, out of the three, could have really set the stage for the next one, because the first film and the second film are so different from each other, and the second and third are really similar.
Yeah, that's true. I think, there was a lot that I wanted to like about the second one. Mm-hmm. It just didn't hit the mark on like any spots.
Yeah.
And especially like, it just seemed like they wanted to make Neo cooler in what he could do, but never really gave a reason why, like, he just now happens to have these other new powers. Yeah.
So what Ben's talking about in this is, so in the first one, he learns how to like manipulate the Matrix, I guess. To be able to sort of like enhance himself. But in the second one, it goes like, there's a fight in a park or in a like a courtyard. Do you want to get into that and how that's the most ridiculous scene ever?
Yeah, most ridiculous up until the third one.
Yeah.
But yeah, that this scene is particular. It's Neo basically facing. I think this was kind of one of the scenes that they were trying to sell people on hard, just because like the stakes, I guess, that they wanted to kind of feel was Neo taking on like probably over 100 Agent Smiths at the same time.
Yes, and
boy, that scene looks bad now, like really bad as far as like the CG quality. It looks really ridiculous.
Yeah, the first one had a few shots where you're like, ooh, this is very CG-esque. But you could tell they were trying to cover it up. This park courtyard scene, which starts off really interestingly, where it's just kind of like this battle, and he has like this stick, baton, staff thing. It's really cool. But then, yeah, it just gets like rubbery. I don't know how to describe what the CGI looks like, but it looks like plasticky and fake.
Yeah.
And it's not just like how CGI in like old movies, you're like, that's CGI. This is almost like a cartoon. It's like in Space Jam. That's almost what it looks like, where it's so detached from reality. You're like, what is this? Like, what were they going for here?
Yeah. It's one of those things. It's also a scene, like, discounting any like bad CGI. It's just also a scene that's just like, what purpose does this scene actually have except to try and like, let's try and do a cool fight scene. Yeah,
if you just skip that scene in the film, you will not lose anything. Like, if you really cut it out. Because they don't reference it again. There's nothing learned in that scene. There's nothing that's like taken away where it's like, he references like, oh, I remember my fight in the park. Like, and if he even said that later, you'd be like, wait, what? Like, oh, it did have an effect on him? This is literally like you're having this plot of a film go in one direction, and then you're stopped at a stoplight for a certain amount of time, and then you restart. So that's kind of what that fight does. It sort of just derails the entire film in every way, but it's not like derailing as it's out of place, because weirdly, it's not out of place for this franchise, but it just doesn't add anything.
Yeah, it's simply like, hey, this is an interesting idea we came up with, or like probably way out of context. There's like, what if Neo fought a bunch of Agent Smiths, and they just kind of forced it into there just to have a cool fight scene, which, whatever.
Yeah, and I'm sure at the time people were like, whoa. But now when you watch it, you're like, it's very like schlocky. And it's very, I think the thing that's the weirdest, not just the fact that everyone looks like they're made out of Play-Doh, but the fact that there's no weight to anything. It's real. Everyone feels like they're bouncy.
Yeah, and that's another complaint I have about the sequels is I don't think, like, even the stuff that's not CG, the fighting seems a lot slower.
Yeah.
And not as good as the first one.
It almost feels like, I know the Wachowski siblings did all three films, but it almost feels like they did the first one and then someone else did the other two and watched the first one maybe for 30 minutes and was like, okay, I know what this is about. I can do this. And it just like, it's really, you're so right. Like even the fighting, like it's slowed down, but in an over dramatic kind of way.
Yeah, there's no, kind of like what you said, like the enemies feel like bouncy, but like, yeah, there's no weight behind any of the punches or kicks. There's no, and the sound quality I thought was terrible for the fight scenes.
Yes.
Like you could not hear like any sort of impact for these punches, kicks, or anything like that. And it just kind of like, it felt like half of what should be happening.
Have you ever seen the movie Kung Fu Hustle?
Yes.
It felt like Kung Fu Hustle, which that movie is a joke on purpose.
Right.
Whereas this was very much serious. And that's what, when I was watching this, I haven't seen Kung Fu Hustle in probably 10 years, but I should definitely go back and rewatch that. But this is what that felt like. It felt so cheesy and so over the top, and kind of like how a lot of those Kung Fu movies did, because that's what a lot of the fighting style from this film comes from, is Kung Fu karate-esque style. It just felt so like a caricature of itself.
Yeah. And it's like right from the beginning of the movie too. The second one starts off with Carrie-Anne Moss, Trinity, like trying to break into like a power plant, and like, you know, there's a hand-to-hand fight happening like within just like a minute or two of the beginning of the movie, and it just, yeah, the fighting, it was just like really slow and felt off, and like, okay, this isn't a good start here to the second movie.
It really isn't. And the, like what you were saying with the camera work before being really, really revolutionary in the first one, I think the camera work in this film was kind of sloppy, if that would be a term.
Agreed.
It's like the framing, and I know you can break framing for film to do creative effect, but this one, it wasn't broken for creativity. It was just broken, and it was just like all the shots feel kind of like uncomfortable, and they don't feel like visually pleasing in the same way a lot of films do. And like psychologically, there's a thing to that. There is a film rule to that. If you haven't gone to film school, there is something to that. And when you break these rules for the wrong reason, it makes your shots feel claustrophobic. It makes them feel like non-legible. And I think a lot of this film had that.
Yeah. Like you said, the bad framing, the kind of basic level things that felt off about it, as far as cinematography goes. And it all I think altogether, it just made it feel rushed.
Yeah.
Like they weren't, and I understand like the first film being the first in like this series of movies, and also it has to do the most sort of universe and world building, but it seemed like the first one was given time to develop these things properly.
I 100% agree with that.
And like from the beginning of the second one, it's just like bang bang. Okay, we're gonna let's open up this world a little bit more. But hey, you gotta keep up with us. It all felt so rushed.
Yeah, it did, and there's the first one was kind of interesting because there's only like 9 characters in the film or something. I know there's more, but there's only like 9 characters. In the second one, they introduce new characters that in theory could be very interesting, but they don't give them any kind of character development apart from like, oh, someone got shot or someone died, and that's the character development. But it's just like you're adding new people to, I get it, to flesh out the world, but like it makes it almost feel even smaller because it makes these people feel fake.
Yeah, and when they're not given time, you're not giving the audience time to explore these new characters, then our first reaction is, well, who is that? I don't care about them. If they die, there's no weight behind their death. Everything like that. And it's understandable you can't give screen time to flesh out stories and character arcs to everyone. But they gave it to nobody.
Yes. Also, this film takes place over 72 hours. I think that's kind of something that we forgot to say, because the Sentinels are coming to Zion to kill all the people, and that happens in 72 hours, and that's the duration or the time span of this film. Where yes. I think the first film is only like in a few days as well, right? I don't really remember. There was no timed stamp on that.
Yeah, and once they made the jump from the Matrix to the real world, they didn't really. It was hard for you to kind of tell like how much time had passed between some of the events.
Which I'm kind of fine with, because in this reality and this universe, I don't think it matters. The whole time thing, yeah, it matters in the sense of like if there's an impending thing happening in the sequels. But in the first one, they could have been doing all that for 4 hours, or it could have been 6 months. And I don't think it really matters.
Right.
Yeah, just the way the story is framed. But
also in Zion, the weird and I feel unnecessary like rave/orgy that just busts out of nowhere.
Yeah, that felt like one of the Wachowski brothers or the studio was like, so we have this action movie, right? People really like it, but you know what they don't know that they want, that we know what we can give them? Weird futuristic sex orgy thing, rave party that doesn't fit with the tone of the film. But tell me, or like, believe me, the audience is going to love it. I can tell you from myself, and probably Ben, it's really weird and super out of place.
And way too long, too. Like, it's like almost 5 minutes long.
Yeah, and I don't know, even like the whole thing where you see all the people in Zion, I don't think you need that, do you?
I don't feel like you do. This whole movie, and like this one and the third one, it's just almost like a never-ending barrage of questionable, like, why do we need this? Why do we need this? Like, what's the importance of this or that, other than just like padding out a movie?
I feel like the second two could have been one movie, and I think they were written to be one movie.
It feels like they were most likely written to be a movie, and the business decision was made to split them up and release them like 6 or 7 months apart, whatever it was.
Yeah, because I would understand if this was 2 movies, like the first one was what the first movie is, and then the second movie was 2 and 3. I would get that, because I'm like, oh, okay. Like the first one was kind of quaint compared to the big action set piece that follows. But the fact that 1 is so different than 2 and 3 is almost more off-putting. Because you could theoretically say, like, oh, the second one is just different than the first one. Okay, cool. Just like how the first 2 Batman movies in the Nolan trilogy are so different from each other. But the third one's also different than the first and second. But if you just had those 2, you can be like, justifiably be like, oh, they're very different but in the same universe. Where this one is normal, weird, and then kind of shit for the third one.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, Ben, do you want to get into the plot of the third one?
The third one, like, yeah, if people thought the second one started to get convoluted, oh boy, just wait.
Yeah. So.
Where's that?
Oh, Ben's reading his notes, everybody. Okay.
My computer screen like kind of flickered a little bit. I'm like, oh shit. What the hell?
Oh no.
Oh yeah. Okay. So anyway, for the third one, at the end of the second movie, Neo gets like put into like a coma after being like the hero of the day again. and Mr. Smith has taken over the body. He's, Mr. Smith can do this now. He can just like possess people in their Matrix form, and then like become them in the real world. Whatever. Yeah, Mr. Smith is back after he was killed on the first one. He's now even more of a virus, kind of working against both the Sentinels and humans.
Mm-hmm.
He's just kind of doing his own thing now. But yeah, at the beginning of the third one, Neo he's still in his little unconscious coma state while everything else is going on around him. And right from the beginning, they start, the Wachowski siblings start introducing even more crazy convoluted shit into the story, more characters. This movie, I tried to stay with so much to understand what was going on. And I think it still kind of escapes me.
You could put a gun to my head and be like, what's the plot of this movie? I'm like, Zion's under attack and Neo goes blind and somehow turns into a robot in the end or something. And that's it. That's the plot of this movie. And
I was trying to think of anything more that actually happened in this movie, but that's really it.
Yeah, and okay.
He fully fulfills his, Christ-like sacrifice behavior in the end. He's gone. Everyone's like, oh, well, he's gone, but he saved us all.
I have a question for you about this. So, what do you think about films where there's the chosen one? So, an example could be Star Wars, where Luke or like Harry Potter's a better one because he's Harry Potter. He's the one who has to defeat Voldemort, and it's kind of that thing. Star Wars has that kind of Luke Skywalker and that whole like Anakin Skywalker, Luke Skywalker, maybe Rey Skywalker, who knows? But that whole like there's a chosen one because you're blank. But whereas a film like Lord of the Rings, I guess you could say, doesn't have it, where it's like, oh yeah, hey dude, you got stuck with this problem, you gotta solve this, but you are not special. Like, I'm really sorry that you got stuck with this entirely horrible thing that you have to do. Here's your gardener. Have fun destroying the super powerful, like, super weapon. Because there's no chosen one, it's kind of accidental, but in the Matrix, it's like, you're Neo, and you have to win because you're Neo, and Neo is the one who will win, kind of thing.
Right, it's the concept of wrong place at the wrong time, having a problem dumped on you versus destiny.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is what you were meant to do.
Yeah.
I feel like pretty much all movies that rely on like the destiny portion aspect of it, like you are the chosen one, this is what you're meant to do, those are kind of boring because it's almost like, well, you just told me the end of the story.
100%.
It's not going to be a good story if he doesn't fulfill his destiny and all of it was stupid and bullshit, and so he ended up not being the one. Like, of course he's going to fulfill that, what he's meant to do. I'm more interested in the people getting a bad situation dropped on them and them having to like persevere through that.
Yeah, I do agree with that in every way because I think the only one where a chosen one situation can work, in my opinion, is if you do like a King Arthur movie, but from his childhood, and then you have the sword and the stone and stuff. I think that's the only time because that's kind of a story we all know. But whenever you have a new film, like even none of the Marvel films have really done it, but like one of those ones where it's like, that Tony Stark is going to save the day in the end because he is the blank. But in the Avengers movies, it kind of doesn't happen. But yeah, I think the fact that they leaned so much into the Neo being the chosen one, you reach that issue by the third one where you're like, okay, one of two things is going to happen. He's going to win and live, or he's going to win and die. But there's no chance he's not going to win.
Right.
So, like, you watch it insofar as I want to see how this pans out, I guess, but you aren't on the edge of your seat for any of it. You're like, okay, well, he's either going to live or die, and he's already blind, and the one he loves is already dead, so he has nothing to lose, thus he's going to die. Like, that's kind of like how this film goes. It's really paint by numbers.
Yeah, I don't even think it takes 5 to 10 minutes into the third one where you're just like, okay, let's, we all know how this is going to happen, let's wrap it up here. let's get through some maybe okay set pieces, and just let's you feel obligated to watch the third one.
Yeah, it's like I've already slogged my way through this. Okay, let's do this. And that's why I was saying at the beginning of the episode, I feel like at least a half of this adventure has been like, what am I doing? Because the first one and then parts of the second one and maybe 15 minutes of the third one, I'm like, okay, like this is a cool thing to do. And then the entire rest of the second film and most of the third film are completely like, what? Like there's a scene in the second one that I think perfectly illustrates this. There's a character who's turning, maybe it's in the first one, but it doesn't matter. There's a character who's turning on the good guys, and he's out to dinner with another bad guy. He's eating a steak at dinner, and like it's a really good looking like filet mignon steak, and he like takes a bite. He's like, the steak is like juicy and delicious, even though I know it's all ones and zeros. My brain will tell me it is delicious and perfect. And it's like, what? Like, what? And then there's like this other like billionaire playboy type character where there's like this bathroom scene, and I don't know what they're implying from that scene. There's a scene in a restaurant bathroom with this character and another guy. Are they implying what I think they're implying there? Or is it something else?
I think you could take it like what you feel like they're implying it as, but I really don't know if that's what their full intention was.
Yeah.
It is weird and ambiguous, and another kind of one of those just like questionable, like what, why?
Yeah, I'm like, if you're trying to make a statement about that, like, good for you guys or whatever, but this is not the film to make that statement. Or if you do want to make the statement, go out and actually do it. Don't do this weird like bathroom two dudes thing and then they walk out. You're like, what? Yeah, I don't know. That was very strange to me. I did not remember that, like that whole thing. Also, that character, the one who like has the twins, the ghosts. What is his purpose in the film?
What was it? His name is here it is. Merovingian.
Oh, Merovingian.
Merovingian, yeah. Okay. A dumb name. Let's just get that out of the way. He's trying to, or he was the guy that was holding the Keymaker like hostage.
Mm-hmm.
And so Neo, Trinity, and Morpheus had to go rescue the Keymaker in order for Neo to go visit the Architect, because the Keymaker has the only access to the Architect. So yeah, that guy, his only real purpose in the story was he was just the person that was holding the Keymaker hostage.
Oh yeah. But yeah. I totally forgot about that, and I watched these literally less than 12 hours ago.
Yeah, and here's an observation I'm sure that anybody that's listening is, even as we're trying to discuss these movies, like these, especially the second two, as best as we can, like if you can't tell in our voices, like these movies are just dumb. Like the second two, they're just like, who cares? Like we're slogging to get through like talking about these movies.
These movies, here's what I think. Watch the first one. Definitely watch the first one. The second two, if you literally are on a plane, like say you're doing like a cross-country flight, or maybe you're flying to Europe or something, and you literally have nothing else to watch, put these two on, and you will fall asleep on your flight. And I know a lot of people don't like NyQuil. Put these movies on. You don't need NyQuil anymore. Or Ambien or whatever. So that's what these movies are to me. They're okay special effects, probably if I watched these 10 years ago. But other than that, these movies are just... watch the first one. That's my review. Watch the first one.
You're losing nothing from your life by skipping 4.5 hours worth of not watching the last two. If you leave it at the end of the first story, you're perfectly fine. Like there should be no desire to find out more about that world.
Yeah, and oh my god, just so much about those films. I have questions for. So yeah. Ben, do you have anything else on there?
I'm really like scouring through this plot line to find out if there's really anything else worth talking about. I guess for the third one, the big final set piece is Neo fighting another giant group of Agent Smiths, only this time
in the ring.
All the Agent Smiths have turned into a giant Agent Smith.
Have you seen... I've never really watched a whole lot of it, but Dragon Ball Z?
I think I watched maybe an episode or two way back in the day when I was a kid.
Okay. I only know about Dragon Ball Z to know I know one character's name is Goku, and I think he goes Super Saiyan. That's about all I know. I'm sorry for the Dragon Ball Z fans. This movie, Neo goes Super Saiyan. Like, he legit flies up in the air and creates like an energy ball and flies at the bad guy Dragon Ball Z style. For all of the Dragon Ball Z fans or diehard Matrix fans listening to this, please feel free to correct me, but that's what the fuck happens here. And it does not make any fucking sense. Also, the king of the robots, like the robot hive mind queen, creates a Matrix chair for him to cure the Matrix, which they're in charge of, to get rid of Agent Smith, who's in the Matrix, and then for some reason the Matrix is pure again, and it's like the Garden of Eden. Please explain that one. Yeah.
It's just all nonsense.
It is.
It really can't be explained. Like, you could not say those plot details to someone without them being like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah. If what I just described to you makes no sense, Ben, I think, can validate the fact that was the best description for what that is.
Pretty much the most accurate one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the most objective description. And I'm sorry if people love these films. The first one is good. That's all I have to say. The second two are just nonsense. And I'm really upset because in my mind, I liked all three of them until today.
I thought I did too. I thought that I think I knew that there was maybe a dip in quality from between the first one and the sequels, but I still remembered like thoroughly enjoying the sequels. But yeah, after watching them again, I'm like, ooh, man, I know more of what I'm talking about nowadays, and these are not that great.
Yeah, it was rough, but yeah, I think unless Ben has anything else to say about The Matrix, that's our talk on The Matrix. But I do have something else I want to talk about.
Nothing else from me about The Matrix. Yeah, I think we've said all that needs to be said about that.
Yeah, watch the first one. That's our review. Ben, I know the next movie series that we can do.
Let's hear it.
I want to do the Bourne movies.
Ooh, okay. And there's, 6 of those altogether?
Let me look. I have them on my phone. Let me tell you how many Bourne movies there are on the... So there's Bourne Identity, Bourne Supremacy, Bourne Ultimatum, and then there's the other one with... So there's 4 of them. Because there's the 3 with Matt Damon, and then there's the one with Jeremy Renner. That's like not connected to him, but kind of is. If that makes sense.
My mic was muted for some reason.
Oh no, it's all good.
I think I've only seen like 2 of the Bourne movies. 4.
Oh, interesting. I've seen all of them, and they all take place in Eastern Europe, and it's cold, and he's disappearing behind a bus. But I do actually like those movies a lot. So I think we should definitely do that for our next one. And it's definitely not because I bought all of them on iTunes. It's not because of that, and I want to justify the fact that I have these on my phone now.
Business-related expense.
Yes, I'm going to write this off on my taxes. But yeah, I think we should definitely do that. And then, Ben, I think after the Bourne ones, do you want to try to tackle the Alien series?
Ooh, we can do that. Just the base Alien movies, or not the Alien versus Predators?
I think maybe we can start with the Alien ones, and then the next thing after that do Alien versus Predators, because there's 2 of those, right?
Correct.
Okay. That means, you know what we should do? We should do all the Alien movies, all the Predator movies, and then Alien vs. Predator.
Okay.
I think that'd be cool.
Did you happen to see the latest The Predator, Shane Black's one?
Yes, I did.
Ugh.
I know. Did you know the end of that film? This is totally non-related, guys. But if you're wondering, there was a newish Predator movie that came out in 2018, and it was garbage. Did you know the end was supposed to have Ripley in that thing?
What?
Instead of the power armor? So there was like 3 different endings. There was one that had the power armor, which was the ending that we got. There was one with Ripley in it, but from 1977, whenever Alien came out, so it was going to be digitally de-aged. And then there was another one that was going to have like a xenomorph in it or something. I think that was what the third one was. I don't remember, but I think it had something else to do with Alien. And I don't know why they didn't do that, because that would have totally alleviated all the other bullshit with that movie. Is if you ended it with just like an Alien thing, people would have lost their minds.
No joke, I thought that was what was going to be coming out of that thing at the end.
The pod? Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, is this an alien? No.
If it was, that'd be so cool.
But yeah, we can get more into what was everything that was wrong with that movie once we get there.
Yeah. But I think, do you want to do the Bourne films next?
Yeah, we'll do the Bournes.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, if you are keeping up with this, if you're not, good. Thank you for having a life. The Bourne films have Matt Damon in them, and they are kind of like espionage, spy-ish action movies, and they're very, very like gritty. But they're really good, and there's a lot of talking in offices, and Jason Bourne looking at them from a sniper rifle from another roof.
Yes.
But yeah.
Yeah, the 2 that I can at least remember, I know I've seen, were good movies. With one thing a curse that they set upon the filmmaking world, which we can talk about.
I know what it's going to be. It has to do with shakiness. That's all I'm going to say. Did I hit it?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, the Bourne films. Yeah, we'll talk about it next time. But the Bourne films use this technique well, but every other film has used it for the wrong reasons. But yes, so that was our talk on that. Ben, do you have anything else for this short-ish episode?
I think that's about it. Watching the Matrix trilogy just drained me, and I couldn't think of anything else worth chatting about that was of substance. Yeah,
I don't also think there's any new movie trailers this week. I think next. I don't know when it's going to be. I've heard it's soon. They're going to do the It 2 trailer. I heard that's coming soon-ish.
Because that's coming out. Is that summer or fall this year?
I think that's going to be late summer because it's hype. Okay. And fall movies usually don't get the same amount of financial. You don't get as many box office numbers from a fall movie as you would a summer movie. And since It 1 was so big, they're going to have to put it out in the summer. It'll probably come out in August, if I had to guess. I don't know. There's no release date, but I'd have to guess it was like August, maybe early September. But yeah, so that's definitely a thing. And one sec. Oh, I was going to ask, Ben, do you have HBO?
I do.
Okay. There's a TV show called Barry.
Love it.
What, you've seen it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
So good.
I just want to talk about that for a hot sec before we end. I'm glad you like Barry. I showed my parents Barry this week, and my mom watched the entire series yesterday. She went through all of it.
Good for her, because, yeah, Bill Hader in that show is so good.
My favorite actor in that entire thing, yes, Bill Hader is incredible. So is Henry Winkler as the acting coach, who is like the most off-putting person in that show, but it's really good. And I think the best character or the best actor in that, in my personal opinion, is Anthony Carrigan, who plays Hank, who's one of the Chechens. He's the bald guy with alopecia. He is so...
NoHo Hank, right?
Yeah, NoHo Hank. He is so funny.
Yeah, he does. He really does. In like in a show full of just wicked talented people, he stands out.
Yeah.
He really does with his dumbass performance.
Yeah, and he's so likable the whole time, where he wants Barry to be his best friend, and it's so funny. It's the whole, like, when there's a scene where Barry's like, oh, I could, like, something, like, cut his balls off or something to this guy that Bill Hader has to kill under a contract from the Chechens, and then NoHo Hank, who's played by Anthony Carrigan, is like, why don't you just shoot him? Have you ever been shot? It's very painful. Like, just do it like that. And he's like, oh, okay. And there's another scene where he has a sniper rifle, and he's like on the phone with Hank, and he's like, oh, I mailed them a bullet with DHL. He's like, it should arrive there between now and midnight. Please wait. And he's just so polite about this whole thing, and he sends him like emojis. It's really funny. But
yeah, anybody that has the mean to watch HBO, definitely watch Barry.
Barry is the end of that show had me speechless.
Yes, it's not just a comedy show. Like there's some pretty heavy dramatic moments in this, and I was very blown away by Bill Hader's range as far as being a dramatic actor in this too.
Oh yeah, there's a scene. There's something that happens in a car in one of the last episodes with him and one other character in a car that you don't think is going to happen. That happens, and after that, I think it's in the last episode, because that's when Barry kind of goes like AWOL. I was like, whoa, Bill Hader actually can really show in a single scene laughter and like being a really charismatic, nice guy, and being like, oh my god, this guy, I could believe he could kill people and just like remorselessly kill people.
Yeah, the particular scene you're talking about with the in the car, it was one of those. I was like, my jaw was on the floor after that. Yeah,
because the whole time you don't think it's shot in a way where you don't think the thing is gonna happen, and then it does, and you're like, oh my god. There's that, and then the final person Barry kills in the show, because he's a hitman. The final person in season 1, and then the final scene is like, and now. The final person he kills, I'm like, whoa. Like, I didn't know they were going to go in that direction.
Right, and without getting into any spoilers, I was sad to see that person go.
I was extremely sad to see that person go as well, because they were one of the most well-realized characters in that show, where they had their own mini arc of being a this kind of antagonist, then protagonist and antagonist, and you just genuinely liked them because they were such a straight man in all of the all the scenes, and then that happens, you're like, oh man, like that. If they do a season 2, which I hope they do, there's going to be serious ramifications of that action.
Yeah, and that's I can't wait to see what they're going to do with it.
Yeah, I wonder if they're going to bring back Stephen Root. Stephen Root, for those of you who don't know, is in Dodgeball. He plays like the kind of geeky guy who gets them into it, who has like the mail order wife, and he's in this as Barry's mentor.
Yeah, he's once again another person that's on that cast that's just amazing in this.
And he's in Office Space.
Yes, he plays what's his name? The Stapler.
Is it? It's not Martin, is it?
No, it does start with an M though.
Let me look this up. It's gonna kill me. We should do an episode on Office Space. Office Space is so funny. Let me look up. It's Milton.
Milton, that's right.
Yeah. Okay, I was close. The red stapler thing is just the best though. But yeah, so that was us talking about Barry as well, which you should watch. I think if you get anything out of this episode, watch Barry before you watch The Matrix. It's much better.
It is. Every single way.
Yeah, literally every way. Like, there's action in Barry, there's comedy, there's drama, and all of it is done exceedingly well. Actually, I have one more question about the show. There's a female kind of lead character. Did you find her really obnoxious?
Are we talking like the lead female opposite of Bill Hader?
Yes.
Obnoxious? I don't know. She was definitely different than most female protagonists. I think that she was more fully fleshed out.
Yes.
which was very much appreciated. She wasn't just, the female opposite of Bill Hader.
Yeah.
She had much more to her than just that.
Oh, yeah. I think so, too. I don't know. There's just a few scenes where I think that she's supposed to be a little bit insufferable and have that kind of actor mentality. But there's a few things that she said after Bill Hader has a little bit of a freak out dealing with people criticizing him for murder. I think after that, maybe the character is written to be kind of heartless, but I don't know. I feel like a lot of people in that situation wouldn't have her outlook, but you never know. I think that scene just kind of rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah, I agree with that. But, yeah, she might have, or she might, because she is, a, not up-and-coming actress, but just a, like an improv actress right now that's trying to make it in Hollywood. So there might be sort of that level of, like, insufferability that comes with that kind of personality.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I found her pretty enjoyable.
Yeah, and I think she was fantastically. The person who did that role is a fantastic actor. It was really well realized. It's just like, when someone writes a character that's kind of grating, you're like, oh, that character's kind of grating. But not to her fault.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's The Tooth. Do you have anything else, Ben?
That's The Tooth.
Okay, cool. That's a good way for me to end this. So I'll sign off and then Ben will sign off. Hey, I'm Russell. This is See What Sticks. And we have a website, and it's always in the description. And you know how to reach us. It's always in the description. You should reach us. It's always in the description. Ben, sign off.
As always, thanks everybody for listening. Hope we can catch you next week listening as well. This is See What Sticks, a podcast about everything and nothing. I'm Ben. Good night.